sheer devastation. A lot of everything's gone. Buildings, homes, businesses, the whole downtown area is gone.
Destruction and devastation. This is what the residents of Lytton, British Columbia feared, a town ravaged by wildfire. And today we see firsthand that there is in fact almost nothing left. Houses, businesses reduced to ash. Good evening and thanks for joining us. People from Lytton were forced to leave at a moment's notice a week and a half ago, feeling the heat from a fast-moving wildfire as they drove quickly, leaving everything behind. Today, they returned home, brought in on buses to see the horrifying damage. Media was also allowed in. Our Katie Nicholson was there and joins us now. Katie, describe what it was like for you when you entered the town.
You know, it's one thing to see the pictures that have sort of emerged from this, and it's quite another to watch this devastation roll by your window. Just houses completely leveled. I saw a Bowflex sticking out of the foundation, the rubble of one home. These are the sorts of things that really stick with you and, you know, make it real. And that, for the residents of Lytton, is sort of what happened today. This was the day it became very real. The scorched violence of the Lytton fire on full display. Nothing left of homes but chimneys and charred bathtubs. Underneath this buckled metal was once the health center. The liquor store, now nothing on its shelves but soot.
It was very difficult today. We just couldn't believe it.
It's like a nightmare.
This devastation, too much for some to bear. They opted out of today's organized bus tour. Others went in their place.
Until you actually see it, it's hard to believe. It will be really difficult, but I think it's the right decision for me. I understand why others don't want to go.
For myself, I just want to see it with my own eyes. And it's going to be tough, but I just want to have closure.
The fate of Lytton so closely intertwined with the Lytton First Nation, whose main reserve was leveled.
That's where most of our people are living. And this was just totally devastated. I think there was one home that was saved, but left standing. But, you know, just so hard on everyone.
The village of Lytton was also an essential hub for those who live nearby.
I still don't know where I'm going to bank, where my medical records are. I mean, I have a prescription I need refilled.
From her pub just 34 kilometers up the road, Laurie Kingston offers words of support.
They're just a beautiful, warm people. And although they've lost their houses, they've lost pets, they've lost neighbors and friends, they've lost their community. And that's one of the strongest points of Lytton, is a very, very strong sense of community.
And for all the loss and devastation, some hope Lytton will rise again. Somehow, against all odds, this house still standing. A reminder of what was and what could be again. Another development in the search for answers. The Transportation Safety Board does have an investigator on scene in Lytton today. This was something that everybody in the community had been hoping for. They want to be able to rule out whether or not a train in fact caused this. Many believe in the community that this fire was caused by a train, and many people here are uneasy because trains are moving through the region. So today the transport minister saying no trains are allowed to move through Lytton for at least the next 2 days.
Katie Nicholson reporting for us tonight. Thanks, Katie. Now, our Susanna De Silva spoke with more Lytton residents after that bus tour. She joins us live now from Chilliwack. Susie, just heartbreaking, truly an emotional day. What are you hearing about the experience for those who lived there and went back?
Yeah, it was a very difficult, a long, emotional day. Some of them knew it would be going in, but didn't really comprehend the full extent of the impact of what it was that they were going to see. You know, we heard in Katie's piece there that for some people they knew it was going to be too much, so they could not do it. But for those who decide to come, it was this feeling that they wanted to see it for themselves. Now, we spoke to Gordon Murray. He shot some dramatic video the night the fire happened as they escaped through town. He said he wasn't sure at first but he decided he did. He wanted to, as he put it, bear witness to what occurred and what could be from that community. And he said initially, you know, the first bus riders, they left the Chilliwack here, they went up to Lytton, and they actually went up to the high school, which survived the fire just up the hill from the community. And he said for that time, it felt like nothing had happened. It was nice to see people they hadn't seen in time as everyone had scattered throughout the region. There was a sense of camaraderie and a bit of normalcy for a little while. But then came the bus ride through town. Take a listen to how he describes it.
It was palpable, the sense of grief and loss that people were having. You know, just looking, it was, you know, shocking. It was like being kicked in the solar plexus every time you turned. Well, we didn't turn corners, you just drove straight through town. But every time you saw another place that was just completely erased, it was hard to. It was impossible to take it all in. And so people were just, you know, they were trying to film, but they were crying or you know, making just sounds of shock. It was like a symphony of loss. There were all of these sounds going on, and everybody was focused on the windows, but it was just overwhelming. An overwhelming experience, and there was so little left of the town, with just these kind of exclamation points of a chimney here or an ellipsis of a little building that survived there. It was just, there's nothing left of the town, essentially.
Now, we asked him about his home and if he saw it, and he said he did. That initially when people were told about the tour, they were frustrated that the bus would only be going through that main strip, the main street of town. But he says because there is nothing left, he could get a glimpse of his home.
There's nothing. You can see the nothing, the erasure throughout the entire village. You could basically stand in one corner and see almost the entire thing. Our house was a bit higher above the village, so I couldn't get a very good view of it, but again, I could see the chimney and all these strange little things that stick in your mind. Like, not only was the chimney standing, but when we went past it, you could see the white fireplace still in the chimney on one side. It was just, it's those kind of strange things, almost haunting presences that stick with you. But everybody was, you know, trying to support one another and trying to, you know, trying to deal with it collectively as.
You know, we asked him in terms of whether this.
Go ahead, Susie.
Sorry, I'd asked him about the, you know, closure and whether or not this would give him some of that, and he said it's too strong of a word, that is not what he was able to get today. It is still too soon. It is still too raw. There are still too many questions, but it did help him begin to look at what the next steps are.
Well, and you hear a lot of reference to supporting each other and building back up as a community. So what are residents saying about what is next?
Yeah, I mean, that is a question. I mean, for a lot of people, there's still the very basic necessities and needs that they have right now. The emergency relief in terms of their housing has been extended by another month to allow places for people to stay, but they will have to start looking for some of those long-term options. But there is support. They're trying to find ways. Gordon Murray is involved in a number of organizations looking at fundraisers, ways to support the communities and farmers markets, farmers in that community that supported other nearby communities. So they are looking at all of those things. As far as going back and rebuilding, that is also the next question. Some people saying absolutely they do want to go back. Gordon Murray looks at it and he says, you know, we need to think before. He says not so much rebuilding, but a reimagining of that community. He says by looking at what was left behind and the beautiful nature surrounding it, the town that was there, he would like to see something more sustainable looking forward, talking about climate change. He talked about, and the fact this was sort of a harbinger for what is to come. He would like to see it reimagined going forward. But everyone there saying it is such a beautiful place. It was such an important community that they do want to go back in some form.
Absolutely, and it will be beautiful again. Thank you, Susanna. We will have much more on this coming up later in the show, including my interview with a resident. Well, it's a big step toward making the long-talked-about SkyTrain extension to Langley a reality. Today, more political handouts as the feds dish out money for the project, which means preliminary work can start. As Joel Ballard tells us, it's good news for many, but some say it should have happened sooner.
Federal government will provide up to $1.3 billion for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extension.
After years of talks, it's happening. The final piece of the funding pie to see the project fully financed, with money coming from the province, the federal government, municipalities, and TransLink.
What we're going to be able to do and what the mayors assembled here today will be able to do in their communities is not chase growth, but help shape growth.
16 kilometers of track will extend from King George Station in Surrey out to 203rd Street in Langley, with 8 new stations. In Surrey, transit riders are excited.
It is fantastic.
If they're going to extend the SkyTrain to Langley, it's going to be pretty convenient.
Although there was a common complaint.
Well, I think it's good. Should have done it 10 years ago.
The team at SkyTrain for Surrey understand that feeling. They've been advocating for this for 10 years.
It took an unbelievable amount of hard work to get this extension on the map.
He says communities in the Fraser Valley can often feel isolated.
Would have been a bus ride almost an hour from Langley City to downtown Surrey, and then another SkyTrain ride. You can do that in a single ride, and the opportunities that open up to travel to other parts of our region, like the Central Broadway, to the airport, it changes everything.
Surrey is one of Canada's fastest growing cities, and some say the extension is only one piece of the transportation puzzle.
You can fit the cities of Vancouver, Richmond, Burnaby within our city limits. And SkyTrain doesn't do the job in terms of connecting our whole city.
And not everyone is on board with the project.
The concern really is the economics of it.
Rick Green is the former mayor of Langley. He's with the South Fraser Community Rail Group. He says the project, which is earmarked for $3.95 billion, is just too expensive based on population.
Finances are going to be a very scarce commodity coming up. And we think that it just doesn't make sense spending that kind of money for that kind of catchment area.
Back at King George Station, there's no set date for when shovel will meet ground, but there is renewed excitement for more convenient transportation. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Surrey.
Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh visited Victoria today. And when asked about a possible election, Singh took the opportunity to call out Trudeau on issues like climate change.
Justin Trudeau, 6 years as Prime Minister, it is the worst track record of all G7 nations, with the only nation that's actually increased emissions over the time that he has been in power. So he's done a horrible job. We need to tackle this climate crisis with urgency.
Singh says there are a number of steps that need to be taken now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The NDP leader believes Trudeau won't win much support with his record should an election be called. Police are asking the driver of a white Tesla to come forward tonight after that tragic crash earlier this week that killed a toddler in downtown Vancouver.
Investigators do know that this vehicle will have information or surveillance footage on it, and that is why we need that driver to come forward.
Police say the Tesla was driving in the same direction as the suspect's vehicle around the time of the crash. A 29-year-old man was arrested on scene after a Ford Escape collided with a McLaren sports car around 6 o'clock Tuesday. One of the vehicles mounted the sidewalk and hit a 31-year-old man carrying his 23-month-old daughter. The girl died on scene, and the father suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Well, some significant players tied to Metro Vancouver gang conflicts have been convicted after a 3-year joint investigation.
The convictions included participation in a criminal organization, murder conspiracy, firearms trafficking, and drug trafficking.
27 people have been convicted as part of Task Force Tourniquet. Police seized more than 170 firearms, more than 10 kilograms of fentanyl, 40 kilograms of heroin, and $2 million worth of cash, jewelry, and high-end vehicles. The crimes happened between 2017 and 2018. A BC judge has denied new evidence in Meng Wanzhou's extradition case. Meng's lawyers asked to use documents obtained through a Hong Kong court that they say undermine the fraud allegations. But lawyers for Canada's Attorney General asked the court to dismiss the request, saying the issue is better suited for Mung's upcoming fraud trial and not the extradition hearing. The decision coming down just a few hours ago, so the judge says the decisions will follow. More than 44% of all eligible British Columbians are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19 as the province marks no new deaths. There are 45 new cases tonight. 73 patients are in hospital with 19 in intensive care. And Pfizer plans to ask U.S. regulators to authorize a booster dose of its COVID-19 vaccine within the next month. The company says a third shot can generate a higher level of antibodies to protect individuals against the virus. But one Canadian expert says there are better uses for potential third doses.
Instead of investing in booster vaccines, we invest in Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and every other vaccine dose possible, going to places that are dealing with the pandemic and leading to variant emergence, as well as death and disability from COVID-19.
The doctor also says a small percentage of the population could benefit from a booster, but input from other countries is needed in order to get at the source of the issue and bring the pandemic under control. As for Pfizer, the company says it will produce 3 billion vaccine doses this year and 4 billion in 2022. Well, with the pandemic pushing more people to get support for their mental health, some have already been waiting years for a professional. And as the CBC's Max Haberstroh shows us, there's frustration that process isn't as simple as just asking for help.
The search for mental health supports for one Vancouver woman began about a decade ago.
There was lots of areas where my life was kind of spiraling. The spending you're doing, the substance use, the excessive amounts of energy.
Tara Hawes now knows she was having a hypomanic episode. But through bouts of deep depression and the intoxicating highs of hypomania, it took until 2017 to get an accurate diagnosis of bipolar II disorder.
The impact on my life was monumental.
And after the diagnosis, the search didn't get any easier. Hawes needs a psychiatrist to get the right care for her. And so far, it's been 4 years with no result.
I followed up and just nothing ever followed through. I don't need somebody to hold my hand. I just want to feel like I'm being supported.
Hawes is nonviolent, not actively suicidal, and not struggling with addiction, making her part of one of the many groups struggling to find timely support.
There is a space of people who are not at the point of needing an emergency department or who aren't needing crisis care, who are caught in this middle space where finding the right services at the right time is challenging, or there's a wait for those services, or the service isn't the right fit.
That gap between asking for help and getting it can take a heavy toll.
Like not knowing how you're gonna get into the next day.
Now COVID-19 is creating a greater need for help from a system that's already strained. Data shows 37% of British Columbians' mental health has gotten worse during the pandemic. Lucas Britton is one of them, living with symptoms of depression that were manageable until COVID isolation set in.
I recognized that I was in that sort of dark, bad space, and all of the normal things that I would have done to help me out weren't available.
It took Britton a month to find an appointment with a counselor. The province is investing $500 million over 3 years into mental health supports, but most of it is going toward the toxic drug crisis. And while more help is coming for others, the government admits there's a problem.
There are definitely still gaps in the system. We don't want people to have to build to a crisis in order to be able to get access to help.
Hawes is now managing her bipolar II symptoms, but 10 years after she first reached out,
I still have yet to have somebody who I can say is fully in my corner from a medical perspective.
And that isn't getting any easier to grapple with. Max Haberstroh, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, if you could use more mental health support, here are a few places to start. The BC-wide mental health support line is at 310-6789. No area code is needed. And the province also has an online program designed to help people cope That's at bouncebackbc.ca. Well, BC's wildfire situation has been stable over the last 24 hours, but after a rain reprieve in some parts of the province earlier this week, skies are clearing and the fire risk is rising. There are 231 fires active across BC tonight, 52 of which are out of control. Meanwhile, droughts are hitting on the island and across the southern and central interior, the worst of it in the Salmon River watershed near Langley, where the province says low flow levels mean harmful impacts on fish are very likely. Johanna Wagstaff is off this week. Amy Bell is here. Amy, seems a bit early for these drought conditions, so are we expecting any changes?
We're really not. We're in for another long stretch of very hot, very dry weather with no precipitation in sight. So certainly a cause for concern, and we'll have to keep an eye on everything. Did have some good news, though, as you mentioned earlier. It's been a very calm day across the province. We haven't had any active weather systems, no lightning strikes, really. So that's been a good chance for things to just improve slightly for the fire danger risk and also help out the wildfire crews. We are looking a lot better, but still definitely much worse than we typically are this time of year, with many areas in the high and extreme rating. So certainly you still need to use a lot of extra caution. Taking a look, as I mentioned today, as you can see, not much happening. We've had a couple lightning strikes earlier today around Cranbrook, but everything sort of has moved off to Vancouver Island. To Alberta. That will not be the case, though. Tomorrow we will see a resurgence of some lightning in the interior, so we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that, and some winds could gust up as well in areas around Kamloops, so certainly not ideal. For us, we are looking at pretty beautiful weekend, I have to say. We're looking at lots of sunshine, but cooling off to a comfortable temperature in the overnight hours. And those temperatures, of course, are as you're near the water. It'll be slightly warmer in the mid to high 20s inland, especially on Monday and Tuesday. That'll be peak heat, and then we'll see things cooling off by a degree or two for Wednesday.
Okay, thanks, Amy. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay, it's official, but will we need earplugs is the question. Vancouver is set to host next summer's Formula E World Championship race. The electric vehicle race will happen over the Canada Day long weekend, with the circuit winding around False Creek in downtown. Road closures will last for 48 hours, and grandstands will have capacity for 56,000 spectators. Now, at top speed, each car hums at around 80 decibels, about the sound of a lawnmower. The promoters say the event is estimated to generate $80 million for the city. The city of Vancouver is rejecting the location for the controversial boy holding a shark statue along False Creek. Impacts to walking and cycling traffic, along with public comments, led to the decision. Now the work will happen to find a new home. A 7.8-meter sculpture was planned for a city-owned plaza along the seawall just east of Moberly Road. This is welcome news for some False Creek residents. A petition against the statue received thousands of signatures. It is that time. Since June, we've been sharing some of the Indigenous languages spoken across Vancouver Island and the people working hard to restore them. Now we're showing you some of the languages spoken on the mainland. Our very own Wamish Hamilton shares a word he thinks you should learn. Have a listen.
Hi, my name is Wamish Hamilton. I'm originally from the Hoopatisset First Nation on Vancouver Island, but I live and work here in the city of Vancouver. I want you to learn this word in Nuchanath, which is my language. The word is na'ah-tah. Na'ah-tah. It means listen. And it's important to know because listening is the basis for teaching, learning, and understanding all things, but most especially each other. Clayco, Clayco.
A reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. That's our free app where you can also find other CBC programs. Our show, CBC Vancouver, is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. After months of job losses, Canada added over 200,000 jobs last month, while most of those are part-time. After the break. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. People in Sackville, New Brunswick are enjoying the town's newest art gallery, from fine pieces of art on the walls to mini wine and cheese platters. And to top it all off, It's free. The only catch is it's tiny. Have a look.
This is the Little Free Art Gallery. If you've heard of Little Free Libraries, it's about the same. Little Free Library, of course, you can leave books, you can take books, it's a free exchange. This is much the same thing, except for it's miniature art. So you can create miniature art and leave it in the gallery, or if you find something you like, you can take it. I tell people, you don't have to leave something, you don't have to take something, you can leave it and run away. You can take something without exchanging it. People don't believe me. I'm like, no, it's supposed to be. If you need to bring something home or if you need to share, it's whatever you want. Yeah, this is the front, okay? So I can outline it up.
I really like the one that's in there now, the red one with the monster eyes. It's just like so bright and so in your face. It's just very playful. And there's been really beautiful, intricately done art. There's been very basic, just rough sketches. There's been kids art, there's been professional level art, and I love the variety of that. And everybody feels free to just put their art out there and not be judged and just...
I think I totally would have done it anyway, but COVID gave it an interesting layer to it. Like when I first heard of the idea, it just appealed to me to have this little miniature box full of miniature art that people exchange. I thought, excellent, I'm all about that. But then after it's been up for a month, and especially me coming by and checking on it, it reminded me of being in lockdown last year, you know, because it's the same room every day, and it's the same people every day, in the same positions every day. And there's this sense of like screaming monotony, and yet we didn't live in a vacuum, you know, the outside still came in, and the inside, when it needed to leave, it left. And I loved that. I loved this sort of reminder of, you know, we're still connected. Even when we're forced apart, we're still connected. And so I liked that layer. I'm the Waterfell Park Artist in Residence this year, and so I was already doing a project in the park, and I had a conversation with them, and I said, you know, I have this idea for an extra thing. Can I put it in the park? And they said, send a proposal. So I wrote up a proposal, and they said, yeah, that's fine. So it was no big deal at all. I think they saw it as a win-win situation.
Sectors hit hard by the pandemic, like retail and hospitality, are coming back to life, with more than 230,000 jobs added to Canada's economy last month. As the CBC's Jacqueline Hansen explains, employers could be facing some new challenges as job markets pick up steam.
Sophia Pappas is finally back in the restaurant business.
So nice things are opening up again. It's exciting.
Last month, more than 160,000 youth landed jobs. People over 25 and those looking for full-time positions weren't so lucky. Compared to before the pandemic, there are still 330,000 fewer full-time jobs in Canada.
Recovering jobs is great, but the headcount isn't enough. It's the quality of jobs that also matters.
As cases of COVID-19 fall, confidence in the economy is coming back. According to a recent survey by the Bank of Canada, businesses across all sectors have plans to hire more. And as restrictions lift, more employees are physically returning to their workplaces.
Do a mom drop. A mom drop?
But for some like Lindsay Richardson, the pandemic has also underscored the need for more flexible work in the future. For the past year, Richardson worked 2 full-time jobs as an HR professional and a parent.
I hit a wall. The burnout was so great.
So she recently quit her career.
Employers are going to have to pivot and make massive changes to retain top talent like myself, because I won't come back if I can't come back to something that works for myself and my family.
As more stability returns to the job market, Statistics Canada says more workers may be willing to take risks and change jobs or leave the workforce entirely.
Employers are going to have to become people magnets. If they want to avoid labor and skill shortages, they're going to have to make it clear that they value their workers, that they are willing to pay them well and provide working conditions that support them as whole human beings, not just as workers.
As more signs of normal emerge, so do questions about what shape the rest of the recovery will take. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
The new National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations is outlining her 100-day plan. Among them, Roseanne Archibald says she wants to recover the remains of children at former residential school sites. But as Olivia Stefanovich reports, Archibald is starting her job amid controversy.
We are going to stare this straight in the face and kick colonial policies to the curb.
Celebrated for being elected the first female national chief, Roseanne Archibald now faces the challenge of entering an office critical of her.
I have been the victim of workplace harassment, and I know what that feels like. And so I'm committed to creating safe and healthy working spaces for everyone.
That commitment comes following an internal Assembly of First Nations report investigating bullying and harassment complaints against Archibald. 10 potential complainants were identified. Only 7 spoke to an independent investigator who found them credible, but none filed a formal complaint over fears of being outed and, quote, taken down by Archibald, who says she's the one who feels targeted.
I have felt that this happened because of reprisal, because in December I stood up for a resolution calling for an independent review on harassment and bullying of women and two-spirited LGBTQIA+ peoples.
Archibald says she can't comment on the confidential report, but did say she supports one of its main recommendations, implementing a whistleblower policy.
I hope that she's able to move forward, and I trust that she'll create that trusting and respectful workplace.
First Nation leaders are coming to Archibald's defense.
This is an honor to see this in my lifetime, to see a woman as the new national chief, and I applaud her.
Archibald is set to have her first meeting as national chief with the Prime Minister today. While she says she will be respectful, she plans to hold governments to account and to not be their friend all the time. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Devastating images coming from the town of Lytton today. Coming up, we speak with an elder who lost everything, but still has a lot of hope for the future.
The National with Peter Mansbridge.
Good evening. Huge forest fires are still burning out of control tonight in southeastern British Columbia. Officials say if they get any worse, as many as 50,000 people may have to be moved. But firefighters did score a major victory today. They managed to stop one fire from threatening the town of Kimberley by subjecting it to an all-out assault with water bombers. Elsewhere, however, weary firefighters are still on the defensive, hoping for reinforcements and praying for rain. Catherine Wright reports.
There are now 7 major fires in this area, 2 more since yesterday. So far, they've consumed 15,000 hectares of forest, much of it prime timber. There is smoke everywhere. You can hardly see the mountains anymore. Fires border this valley for about a 200-kilometer stretch. They're running along the mountains on both sides of the Columbia Valley. Evacuation plans are being prepared for all the towns between Cranbrook and Golden.
Okay, there is a number if it comes to the point that there is an evacuation.
At this particular point in time, we're asking the residents to think about the possibility of arranging for some accommodation in another community with a friend or relative if it's possible.
There's a total population of 50,000, but we're not talking about evacuating all 50,000. We're just looking at all those isolated little pockets of communities along this highway, and if they have to move quickly, where can they go? Okay, thanks, guys.
The man in charge of the evacuation is constantly on the move. It isn't very encouraging for people who live here.
No, not with it coming down this way. I guess it's right behind Fairmont Hot Springs right now, too.
I got about 50, 60 head of cows to think of. I just can't pick up and leave.
It's becoming a nightmare for Jack Carradise. He's in charge of putting the fires out. Every morning he heads out to the front lines. In the cool morning air, most of the fires are quiet. He talks to all the fire bosses, trying to assess yesterday's damage and what's in store for today. As the day wears on, the fires start building, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they look like this. That's when the residents start worrying.
Well, they're getting their belongings together and finding places to go, stuff like that. Then they slow down, and once it slows down, they slow down. You kind of work with the fire. You watch it, and it watches you, it seems like.
Carradis says he needs help. He wants more support from the government.
Jack, how you look?
Today, the forestry minister and his top officials came to town, and they listened.
We're now into a major war situation.
They promised more men, more equipment, and more organizational support.
Welcome back. We want to take you back to our top story now.
Pure devastation. A lot of everything's gone. Buildings, homes, businesses. The whole downtown area is gone.
Destruction and devastation. This is what the residents of Lytton, British Columbia feared. They returned today by bus to see their town ravaged by wildfire. You can see here firsthand that there is, in fact, almost nothing left. Houses, businesses reduced to ash. Byron Spinks is one of the Lytton residents who returned today to see the damage. He's an elder with the Lytton First Nation and former chief. Byron, I imagine today was a very tough one, so I first off just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
It's my pleasure. It was a pretty tough trip for many of us going up into Lytton, but we made it.
Can you tell me what you saw when you went back?
Well, it was pure devastation. A lot of everything's gone. Buildings, homes, businesses. The whole downtown area is gone. My residence up on IR-17 subdivision was mostly gone. My house was burnt down, unfortunately. But it's good to confirm that it's gone, so I can take the next steps on how to rebuild it. And so it's a relief for me to know that, and we can move on from here. But it's the city, the town, the village is just devastated. It was unbelievable. I couldn't imagine any worse scenarios than this, because when we went through the town, everything was scorched except a few homes that were lucky to be surviving. Some of the vehicles that were down there were survived, but all important businesses, the hospital, the medical center, the hotels, the shopping center, grocery store, hotels, all gone.
Absolutely devastating. And you mentioned that you felt relief to finally be able to see your home and know that it's all gone. But I can't even imagine that horrible feeling that you must have had back there. Can you tell me about that? What were you thinking when you saw that there was nothing left?
Well, it really hit home when we got up into IR-18, because that's where most of our people are living. And this was just totally devastated. I think there was one home that was saved, but left standing. But, just so hard on everyone. At the time, it wasn't quite, you're trying to absorb everything, but, after you leave, it sort of hits you at home. But I know that talking to all of my friends that I met in Lytton, we're all reassuring each other that we're going to come together again to rebuild a better Lytton than we had before. So I'm really confident that I really appreciate seeing all of my people, because it's the first time I've seen a lot of my friends in person we've talked over the phone, but this is just a heartbreaker today.
Oh, I imagine there were a lot of tears when you all reunited and saw all of that.
I think after a while there will be a lot of tears, but at the moment, when you're viewing it, you know, it's really hard to comprehend, and you're just trying to take it in, take a picture, and then, you know, when you review it later, that's when it hits home.
And can you tell me, when you left Lytton, you had to go in a panic. Were you able to grab anything, or are all your belongings gone?
All our belongings are gone. We just had time to grab my car keys and my wallet and a house key and for another residence, but just a matter of seconds, it was up in flames. We were trying to get out as fast as we can, and we could just feel the heat coming through the car window as we were driving out from our driveway, and people are scrambling everywhere on our community. And you know, my partner Gloria, she lost everything, her memories, her children's mementos, that can be replaced. But the things I lost can be replaceable. But I feel for my partner because she's really, you know, taking the brunt of it, and it's going to take a long time to get over the loss that we both had experienced.
And how is she doing after seeing the damage?
Day to day, you know, try to provide as much support as we can with each other, and that's the only way we can do. There's a lot of support, counselors being provided, and that'll take time to work through that also.
You know, you talked a lot about supporting each other and rebuilding together as a community. Tell me more about where you go from here. What's next?
Well, we're fortunate to have the Boston Bar First Nation has provided some housing for us, and we really appreciate it. And our family is starting to gather down here. We're going to take it step by step. And my son's home was also up in flames, and we're going to work together and try and rebuild a better future in that area. Some of the homes in our subdivision are still standing, and it's going to be very hard for them, I think, to see all the devastation around them. And I hope that the rebuilding process it happens soon, because the sooner the better. With the longer we stand, not knowing what to do, I think the harder it will be for us to deal with it.
Well, Byron, I admire your strength. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, and good luck. Byron Spinks is an elder with the Lytton First Nation. He lost his home, everything, in that wildfire that destroyed the town. Again, thank you, Byron.
Thank you very much.
The Calgary Stampede is back, but this year things are a little different. The COVID rules of the fair next. At 6:41, a live look at False Creek and the boats docked in the sunshine. After some cloud, the sun is back. Amy Bell breaks it down, and she'll tell us just how hot it's going to get next.
when your backyard is burning, is anywhere safe? I'm Adrienne Lamb, the host of a new podcast, World on Fire. Join us on the front lines of wildfires burning around the world. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, with Alberta's pandemic restrictions lifted, the Calgary Stampede is underway. And this year, it's a different kind of rodeo. Carolyn Dunn shows us why.
The Calgary Stampede, unbelievable!
The greatest outdoor show on earth is back.
I just love the Stampede, and I've been waiting for 2 years.
But not without some COVID precautions. Workers are wearing masks. Guests can make their own choice. Cleaning and sanitization is increased, and they're asking everyone to distance. Even the iconic Stampede Parade had a very different feel to it. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney came in on horseback. Naheed Nenshi followed in his final parade as Calgary's mayor. But there were no crowds lining the streets for this virtual event. For Nenshi, that made sense.
This year, the Stampede is about honoring what we've been through. It's about honoring the front line and the essential workers. It's about honoring what we've lost in COVID, but it's about turning the page.
Plenty of people are intent on doing just that, lured by the excitement of the Midway or the zen that can only be found in a barn.
We drive for 8 hours.
Paul Ma and his family drove overnight from Saskatchewan to attend their very first Stampede.
My family all have the full vaccinate.
If they plan to attend a country concert at the famed venue Nashville North, they'll have to show proof of that vaccination or take a rapid COVID test before entering. That's to ensure the biggest concerts don't become super spreader events. But that proof of vaccination is a slippery slope, according to some privacy experts.
In Canada, we're not the kind of place where we are accustomed to having to show our papers to prove that we've made a socially acceptable choice about our health.
Nothing is truly normal about this Stampede, but it's closer to normal than many have experienced in many months.
Okay, well, that's exciting.
It is.
But a lot of signs in that story that it is very hot there.
It looked very hot. Too hot for a cowboy hat.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And here, not quite as hot, I think.
Not quite as hot, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a bit of a sweaty one at times, as it has been. We're not dealing with a heat dome, which is great news, and it has been a very, just boring day across the province, which we will take. It was very settled for all those wildfire areas. We didn't have any lightning strikes. Of course, we didn't have any rain, but it was just very clear and calm. It will stay that way for the rest of the day or evening. And then tomorrow, we do have a chance of things getting a little bit more active for the northern half of the province. So we'll take a look. You can see over the next couple of days what we're going to see. Oh, it just doesn't seem to want to work. But I will tell you that what we are going to see is a ridge of high pressure that's going to be sitting just off the coast. That is going to keep everything to the northern part of the province. So with that, that means we'll see things really settling down. I'd say from about Prince George northward is when we'll continue to see some active weather over the next couple of days. But for the interior, down into the Kootenays and the very southeast parts of the province, that gives all those areas a nice chance to finally sort of catch their breath. It will be warm, though not as hot as it has been. So again, that is great news. Over on the island, we do have a chance of some showers for Tofino, and actually overnight we'll have a system coming up from Washington, and there is a chance that it could just brush some areas right on the coast of Vancouver Island, and we could see some thunder and lightning, but nothing too significant. So everybody actually looking fairly good. We are still dealing with extreme heat in some areas of the central coast. For the north coast, though, you are looking at showers for tomorrow. We will see things sunny and hot around the Okanagan, such as Kelowna. Kamloops will be very hot and at times a bit breezy. And then for us on the south coast, well, for Vancouver Island, as I mentioned, we have that slight chance of thunderstorms, but then settling down to a nice mix of sun and cloud for most areas. For us on the south coast, we are going to start off with a little bit of extra cloud in the morning, very early. It'll burn off very quickly, even quicker than we saw this morning, and then we'll head into the sunshine. And what we're going to see over the next several days is these warm blue sky days and the temperatures in the mid to high 20s, and then overnight staying clear and dropping down to about 16 degrees. So we'll have those great summer days, but then it'll be dropping down to a nice cool and comfortable temperature in the evening. So I think think that's a pretty good trade-off for July.
And kudos to you for remembering all of that with your graphics not working.
Almost made it through the whole week without a computer glitch.
Thanks, Amy. Well, a little bit of history and some heartbreak for Canadian tennis star Denis Shapovalov at Wimbledon today. He played in his first ever Grand Slam semifinal, but in the end lost to the best in the world. Salima Shivji shows us the Canadians and Brits cheering him on.
So we are ready for this second semi-final.
It's not quite Wimbledon, but perhaps a close second to watch the action. In the crowd, quite a few British fans of Canadian Denis Shapovalov.
We love an underdog, especially here in Britain.
Just seeing somebody coming through for their first semi-final and looking confident is a great thing.
He's young, he's fresh. We haven't seen him at Wimbledon before. So keep going.
Over at Wimbledon, Brenda Taylor's allegiance is on display.
He's got the talent, he's got the shots, he's got the energy, and I think when he's playing at his best, he can win.
The stakes were high, the 22-year-old hoping to prove he belongs in his first Grand Slam semi versus the heavy favorite. And they both did their homework.
Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge for sure. You know, obviously he's been playing super well this season.
It's going to be a battle, and I need to be at my best.
And we have a rare talent.
5 years ago, Shapovalov won the boys' title here. Djokovic at that point had already won 12 Grand Slams. Fast forward to today, on equal ground, the slate clean.
Oh, what a smash!
For years, Adriano Fioravia coached a teenage Shapovalov.
Make it! Nice get.
He's still coaching the next generation, thinking of his former star pupil at center court, an ocean away.
He's fearless. He always had the fire, always had the athletic ability, always wanted to make great shots.
Takes it.
He did make some great shots today, but so did Djokovic. The Canadian, increasingly frustrated, just couldn't pull off a win against the world number one.
And ruthless.
It was over in 3 straight sets. Shapovalov bitterly disappointed and unable to hold back the tears, even as the crowd and his opponent celebrated his play.
We're going to see a lot of him in the future, definitely. He's a great player.
The future very bright for the young Canadian, not yet at his peak. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
Close encounters of the whale kind. Why some boaters near Gabriola were visited by a pod of orcas. Next.
I grew up as a black ballerina, never having access to dancewear that matched my skin tone.
Anita Bathe started Revolutionnaire as a dance blog 2 years ago, inspired by her own experience as a black ballerina.
The dance blog was really focused on promoting activism in ballet, sharing stories of diverse dancers and their experiences. We quickly expanded to having apparel and accessories for everyone in a variety of shades of skin tones.
I was, watching Nia as her older sister and just totally in awe of what she was creating. And it was in 2020 where I woke up in the middle of the night with this idea whereby what if more young people like Nia, who had a dream of making the world a better place or even just their communities a better place, had access to the community, the tools, the resources and information that they need to really scale their impact. A large part of this was also inspired by Nia and I's experiences being involved in activism and community development from a young age, and more recently last summer when we really saw young people using their voices like never before to make their views heard about the issues that concerned us.
So the sisters got to work turning Revolutionnaire into an online platform where people can learn, connect with others, and take action all in one spot.
What we've experienced and what so many people who we've spoken to have experienced is that it's such a fragmented experience to get involved in activism and change making. If you want to start a petition, you have to go to this website. If you want to do a donation drive, you have to go here, a fundraiser, a different website, and people just really don't know where to start.
We've been working with our team to build out our resource library, both in terms of the how-tos, like how do you plan a protest, how do you plan a phone banking session, how do you plan a community meeting.
The social network is focused on 5 causes to start: criminal justice reform, environmentalism, gun reform, housing and food security, and racial equity.
Why are these 5 so important to you? Time and time again, as we spoke to so many young people in the lead up to launch, these were the topics that constantly came to a focus, especially, coming out of COVID-19. I think we've really seen how the pandemic has very much so worsened the realities that we've seen as it relates to racial inequity, as well as things such as housing and food security. So we break down these complicated topics into very accessible articles and do it with, the focus of how can young people get involved in these issues today. And then in addition to that, young people or people of any age that are interested in making a difference can log on and create their own action items, be it a petition, a fundraiser, donation drive, a letter campaign to their member of parliament.
We really hope to incubate a generation of change makers and people who are not only motivated to make a difference, but are actually making those dreams that they have for the world a reality and taking action, being really bold about it, and feel empowered to know that they can actually change the world.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Vancouver Queer Film Festival is back. Enjoy the best in independent queer cinema along with workshops, artist panels, Q&As, and more. Learn more at queerfilmfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Well, if there's one thing that would make it on a BC bingo card, it's an encounter with a whale or perhaps a whole pod. Yesterday, one family boating near Gabriola Island was able to mark that square.
Within like 5 minutes, they were just swarming the boat, like going underneath the boat. There's 4 of them. It was crazy, like once in a lifetime experience for sure.
If you caught in one of these rare encounters, one expert says not to worry. Despite the name, killer whales won't harm people, but it is best to keep your distance.
When killer whales do approach a boat like this, if you're, surprised by them, which it does happen, is the best thing to do is to sit their engines off and, give them their space, let them do what they're going to do. They're going to investigate, and then they'll move on.
Turning off your engine also keeps the orcas from getting hurt. McInnes says the transient whales were likely looking for a harbor seal, which may have swam underneath the boat. Pretty cool stuff. I have yet to check off that box, but here's hoping it'll happen sometime soon. Okay, there's something refreshing about a tall, cold one on a hot summer day. Imagine that icy feeling traveling slowly down the throat. And if you are a giraffe, well, that's a pretty long way to go. With temperatures hovering around 40 degrees, this zoo in North Macedonia is offering frozen treats to its inhabitants. The 2 in-house giraffes, Casper and Floppy, appear to be relishing the healthy helping of carrots, leeks, apples, and onion. Maybe the trick to eating your daily serving of veggies is to hide them in a block of ice and wait for a really hot day. Might have to try that one with my baby daughter. Good tip. Okay, that is it for our program tonight. You can always find it online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock with Tanya Fletcher after the National. Good night.